Chelsea. And I can't hear anything. I think we have a slight issue here. Good morning, everybody. Now I can hear everybody. That's good.
Morning.
Lovely, always reassuring. I come on and there's nothing, I can't hear anything. And there you go. Even better if I turn the webcam on. Amazing. Amazing, these rookie mistakes after 8 weeks. I think it's the sunshine outside that I've gone, oh, yeah, okay, we're almost back to normal. We're back in the office, as you can see. So working from home and out, back in the office, so which is nice to get a change of scenery and get away from my lovely, lovely teenagers, who obviously I treasure every second with them. But it's nice to have other conversations going on around me other than, you know, why do I have to do that? So, okay. Good morning, Kathy. Haven't spoken to Kathy yet so far. That's good. So we're just waiting for people to come on. Tori will be on here in a minute. What we're going to be going through today is how to get people back from furlough. Okay, so we're going to go through that. We have got, Tori, good morning, Tori, how are you? So we're going to go through the different areas that you need to be thinking about and the different approaches. Some of it, as usual, is the legal situation. What can you legally do? And then more the ethical situation, okay? And some of it, unfortunately, as usual, with anything to do with furlough, is this is our best educated guess so far. We err on the side of caution for now. Things may change. I did this call yesterday with golf clubs, and I had somebody from a committee. Committees are very unique entities, and he was quite loud and quite definite that this was all a waste of time, and he's only on here because he's been told to be on it. It's like, I didn't tell you to be on it, and I don't see why we can't just force them to be back. And it honestly, and it's like, it's not that straightforward anymore. It wasn't that straightforward before, but it's definitely not that straightforward now. What I was going to start with is if I hand over to Nadia, because we had an interesting question yesterday about maternity, didn't we, Nadia? So if it's a question for Tori, but if Nadia asks, yeah.
Morning, everyone. Tori, my question is, it's actually come from a question that we had on one of the group calls yesterday, is if an employee is returning from maternity leave now, they're due to return any day now, and they have been on the unpaid part of their maternity leave, so they haven't been paid in February or March. Our advice has been that those employees you wouldn't be able to claim furlough for those employees. However, we wanted to see if you have had any clients that have claimed successfully furlough for an employee in that situation.
Nadia, we haven't had anyone in that situation to push it through from, but my understanding is that there has been some discussions in the background about how we're going to deal with people that have been on maternity pay. It's just we haven't had any clarity on it yet. Is that how you've seen it?
Yes, we don't really have clarity on it, so we're sort of erring on the side of caution, really, because there isn't clarity, but there is, you're right, there's an awful lot of chatter about it, and whether those employees should be able to claim furlough or not. So yeah, at this point we are advising people no, but we wanted to check if you'd seen any of your clients in that situation.
We haven't got to that point yet, and I'd agree. I think the cautious approach is the way to go until we get something definite that says yes, you're able to. The overarching rule is if they weren't on the payroll for that period, then they're not going to be able to go through on the furlough. So I think that's the safe answer. And the bit that sort of gives me a bit more hope is that the guidance now about correcting previous furlough claims is not to make a change in the current claim, but wait until the system opens up to allow us to make corrections to old claims. So my thinking is that if you advise to not claim for that stuff, and then it becomes clear over time that you can, we'll be able to go back into previous periods and do that amendment. But that's not available just yet, but they are working on it. So there's an understanding at HMRC's end that there are things that are going to have either been done incorrectly, and we will have an opportunity to claim at a later date.
Great, thank you very much.
Lovely. So straight in there with the accounting question, put Tori on the spot. Fantastic. Before we go into the into furlough again and get people back from furlough, we also had another question about restructuring yesterday. That if we were dealing with golf clubs, and a lot of them are thinking about closing down their food and beverage because they can't open until the 1st of July at the earliest, and probably then certainly not in a way that they're going to make any profit. So they're going to close them down. We then had the question, when could we get a contract caterer in, a franchisee caterer in to cover that if there's demand? If you are making any department redundant or any people redundant, and then you take on a freelancer to do that role, be it a company or an individual person, the same rules apply as if you employed somebody to do that role. They've got 4 months to start a claim against you for unfair dismissal. And at the moment, because of the backlog, we're saying if you've got to really leave 6 months to make sure that there's no claim coming, because they might have put a claim in at the 4-month stage. You might not hear about it for another 2 months. I mean, is that much of a backlog at the moment? It was a backlog before, and that was when they could operate normally. They've had to change all their procedures. It's not going to be quick. So if you are firing people because you don't need them anymore, and then you go, actually I do, to avoid the unfair dismissal claim, you need to go back to those same people and offer them the job again. Okay, it doesn't have to be the same job they had, it just needs to be the new job that you're going to be going out and recruiting for, okay, be it to freelancers or another company. Otherwise, if you do get a franchisee in to do something, the people who were doing that role before should transfer under TUPE, so TUPE, and that's an automatic process. That doesn't have to be triggered by anything. You don't have to follow. There is a process to follow, but it's going to happen anyway. And if you don't let them transfer, because with that, then it's automatic unfair dismissal, even if they're under 2 years. There is a claim there, so you need to be careful about that. Okay, it's just that one came up yesterday. They thought, oh, we'll get rid of our F&B, and then we'll get a franchisee in. It's like, you won't, not until January anyway, so that's fine. We'll do some more questions about furlough and restructuring and notice periods at the end. The thing about furlough, as we all know, because we all have no other thing that we listen to with avid attention as business owners other than, oh my gosh, what's happening in the business community, is that furlough is now extended until the end of July. Okay, so it's at the end of July, 80%, no change there. After July till the end of October, there will be a furlough scheme in place. It is not necessarily going to be 80%. In fact, I'll say definitively it won't be 80%, but we don't know what it will be. The governor, it's not a governor, it's the chancellor, is going to tell us by the end of May what those are. It's not going to be, and again, somebody yesterday said, so by the 31st of May we'll have this. Well, yeah, by the 31st, but it might be tomorrow that we have it. It might be in 2 weeks that we have it. So obviously, as soon as we have it, we'll be talking about it on this call, and we'll be sending out emails as well if there's something you need to be aware of. But it's very likely that you're going to be paying half the salary, and that the government's going to be paying the other half of the salary. Okay, but that means that with the lockdown light as we have it now, and people trying to go back to, well, as near normal as they can, is that what happens if you now say, we're starting up the business again, I need people to come back off of furlough, what do you need to be doing there? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen, that one. Okay, any questions, just put them in the chat. We'll see, and then we can go through those at the end. So just to reiterate, the minimum for a furlough that you can claim is 3 weeks. So it's 3 weeks furlough at any one time. You can then bring them back for a day or a week or 2 weeks, but you have to have 3 weeks for each claim. Okay, you can't. We had somebody yesterday who said, well, I brought them back for 2 days, then I put them on furlough again, and then I realized there was a lot of work coming in from the 2 days work, so I brought them off again. And we're like, well, then you have to pay them in full. You can't claim furlough for that time, because we can't claim it off the government. You could say they're on furlough and pay them 80%, but you couldn't claim it back because it's not 3 weeks. Okay. They're still not allowed to work for you whilst they're on furlough, or a related business, but they can work for others if you want them to. And to be honest, I think probably we should be letting people go out and earn money, because at 80% of their salaries capped at 2,500, for some people that won't be enough to pay all their bills. So I don't personally see a problem with people going and working somewhere else, but that is a decision for you as to how strict you're going to be on that. Right, so this is the easy one. That's why there's a gold star there, because it's like, oh, you're so easy to do with. So you've asked somebody to come back. They don't have, they're not in the extremely vulnerable category. They're not pregnant with a heart condition. They're not shielding. They're not over 70, and they don't have childcare issues. And you've asked them to come back, and they said yes. It's like, oh, fantastic, gold star, come back, brilliant. For all of these, you need your risk assessments and your social distancing policy. So you need to take the government guidelines, and I've got the links at the end of this PowerPoint where the government guidance per sector is in there, and you can then go through and go, okay, what do we need to do to make it safe? So for example, estate agents are allowed to do house showings now. And what they have, one of their procedures they put in place is that internal doors in a property all have to be open or propped open, so nobody touches door handles anymore. And I was thinking, also I read about the, I think it's the Hasidic Jews who are very strict on the Sabbath, and they have, if they live in a building that has a lift in it, they're not allowed to do any work on the Sabbath, and work includes for them pressing a button in a lift to go up to their floor. So on the Sabbath, those lifts are programmed to open at every floor and go down at every floor, so that you don't have to do it. So there are ways around it, but you need to have that ready to go to send to people, because the easy one, the gold star people, are not, obviously not that concerned about it, but they would like to know what the risk assessment is. But you will need the risk assessment for the next one. So they don't come into any of those categories, but they do not want to come back. That is absolutely when you need your detailed risk assessments. And I've got the link to the health and safety website. If you already have a health and safety provider, you should be talking to them for their COVID-19 risk assessment. You need to do that risk assessment for every single role, not just the office. So you've got the office, but you've got, okay, Caroline's role in the office, Nadia's role in the office. How much are we going to be touching? What do we do? Caroline usually sits here and talks on Zoom all day. She's not a danger, whereas Nadia tends to move around more. Okay, what do we need to put in place? So you've got to do it role specific and not just building specific. You also need your social distancing measures. Are you going to put tape on the floor? You've got to reassure the people who are saying no, as a first step, minimum first step, that you have taken it seriously, their concerns, and that you are putting stuff in place to keep them safe. Now, what the reason they're saying no is not because they've got any of the other things, they're not in any of the categories, it's because they're afraid of catching coronavirus, which I understand that fear. However, it's not a legally justifiable reason for not coming back to work. That's the thing. So this is what I'm saying. We've got the legal situation and we've got the human situation. Legally, that is not enough of a justification to come back to work, which is why you're doing the risk assessments and the social distancing policy. You show them that, you see what concerns they have. Some of them will be maybe understandable concerns and you can work around and see how you could do it. Others might be, I don't care what you do, I'm not coming back. That's when you then go into, well, okay, I have to advise you, you're no longer on furlough, you are now on unpaid leave. It's not layoff, because you are not saying you don't want them to work. You are saying that I want you to work, I'm giving you work, and you are refusing. So you're refusing a reasonable management instruction, which is a potential disciplinary, although I don't think we particularly want to go down that route at the moment because we've all got enough other things to do. But it's certainly unpaid leave until they come back. If you've done everything reasonable in your health and safety to provide a safe workplace, then you are absolutely within your rights to make sure that they come back. Nadia, what do you think?
Sorry. Yes, absolutely. You can go down a disciplinary route. You don't have to, and absolutely many of us don't want to right now. But certainly unpaid leave until they're willing to come back, which may be for weeks for some of them. But that may encourage them to come back quicker as well.
Okay, so I've put it at the bottom there, personal injury claims. Now, this is a bit we don't know. The ambulance chasers haven't had a lot of chance to get money lately because nobody's been doing anything. The accidents are down, all those claims are down at the moment. But what our feeling is that as soon as people are being made, for want of a better word, to go back to work, is that if they do get coronavirus, it wouldn't necessarily be your fault, but if they do get coronavirus, that there may well be a group of lawyers out there who are ready to do personal injury claims saying you didn't provide a safe workplace, which is why you need all those risk assessments and social distancing policies sorted out. You also need to get them to sign off on their risk assessment for their area and that they understand the social distancing guidelines, because like we had a question yesterday, half her team were like, oh yeah, coronavirus, not a big deal, it's not a problem. And the other half wanted hazmat suits, okay? What she didn't want is somebody in the we don't really care about it group not following the social distancing guidelines, which then led to problems with the hazmat suit people. And so you need to put in that if you don't follow these guidelines, it is potential gross misconduct. Okay, so you need to put that onto the piece of paper. So you do need to get them to sign some more bits of paper. Ideally, actual signing, but you could do it electronically. One of the Adobe the DocuSign things, you can get an electronic signature that would work, but you need to have a signature that they absolutely understood, so that they can't come back and say, oh, well, I didn't actually read it when I signed it. Okay, that's not good. And if you're one of our clients, we've already got in our code of conduct that not following health and safety procedures in any context counts as gross misconduct, okay, because you can't get people to abdicate their right to sue you under health and safety. We often have this in the golf clubs that the greenkeepers say, I don't want to wear the boots because they might make my feet sweaty, but they're steel tip boots, and then they're using strimmers and everything. And the clubs are like, well, that's okay, they're grown ups, we'll get them to sign something to say it's not our fault if they lose their toes. It's like, no, that isn't how it works. You are still responsible even if they sign that. So you need to be protecting yourselves from those claims. Okay, but again, we don't know how high that risk is. It might not ever happen. It might be, again, a bit of a storm in a teacup here about the personal injury claims, but you have to assume that until we have evidence to the contrary, that would come if you do not take the right precautions, okay? And your insurance company, who will pay that claim, will want to know what precautions you've taken. Okay, now, if they're in the extremely vulnerable category, and I did put a link in the chat to the extremely vulnerable category, because that category, those categories have changed. So all the government advice gets updated on an ad hoc, impromptu basis, and they don't often send us a thing saying, oh, by the way, don't bother looking at that website now, it's still live, but actually, you should be looking at this website. It's a little bit of a minefield out there, but the link I put in is the one with the definitions of the extremely vulnerable categories now, okay? So the previous one, disregard. This is the one where you, like Tori in the accounting for the furlough, you've got to use the most up-to-date information. So yes, 8 weeks ago they said one thing, now they're saying a different thing. Slightly different, not totally different. You've got to make sure you're looking at the right thing, okay? So if they're in that extremely vulnerable category, and they say, I don't want to come back, or you're just considering whether you want them to come back, have they got an NHS letter? There are 1.5 million of those sent out. If they've got an NHS letter, they should stay on furlough or working from home. You should not be bringing them back in. That is just a court case waiting to happen and a blank check that you're going to have to write, okay? If they don't have the NHS letter, but they meet the known criteria, that's why I'm saying you need to know what the current criteria are, and that will change as we get more data on who's most at risk. But if they meet that known criteria, again, if you're happy with that as a reason to keep them on furlough or working from home, keep doing that. If they don't meet the known criteria, but they have something else, because it does say on the NHS, on the government guidance, that it's not an exhaustive list, that there may be other things. They obviously can't list every single illness that might be affected. But if they say, if your employee says, actually, I think I've got something that would be a problem, then you can ask them if they could get a GP note. GP's practices are not overwhelmed at the moment, so it's quite possible that you can get a GP note saying, yes, they've got something, and I feel as a GP that they would be at risk if they came back to work. That's absolutely fine. Or maybe even a phone call with the GP, just the GP says, yes, that's fine. So in all of those cases, to furlough them or work from home, okay? Nadia, you had a couple of things about what counts as proof of the disability.
Yes, so we have had actually in the shielding section, which we will talk about in a bit later, we've had an employee who said that she needs to shield her husband who has diabetes, and they asked for proof, and she was able to submit a HGV driver's license document that says that he has treatment and regular checks for diabetes. Now, that sounds like a really random document to accept for someone's husband as proof. But the idea is that it only needs to prove to you that that person can be on furlough. It doesn't have to be submitted anywhere. It doesn't need to be any sort of, the document doesn't need to meet any criteria. It is about proving it to you and no one else. So if you're happy that it proves that that person can be home, then you're good to go.
Got it again. Rookie mistake. It's a Friday. It's a Friday. I need more coffee. Okay. So what they have, this is one of the areas where they've changed their advice. It used to be 8 weeks ago that if you are pregnant, you should be at home. Now the advice is very clear. It's pregnant with a heart condition needs to be furloughed or working from home. Okay. Normal pregnancy, normal healthy pregnancy without any pregnancy illness, related illnesses should be absolutely fine to be working at work. Again, if your pregnant employee feels that they wouldn't be safe, you would need to get a GP's note from them or a phone call to discuss that. And if the GP says they are not safe to go back to work, there is no argument with that. You cannot legally question a medical professional's evaluation. Okay, this has been, I'm going to tell you why, because it's gone all the way up to the most, Supreme Court on these things, Employment Appeals Tribunal, because lawyers obviously don't accept that a GP knows what they're talking about, and particularly things like depression, they're like, oh, well, they're not depressed because da-da-da, and the GP was just easily conned, and da-da. So it is actually now a statement of fact that if a GP says they have depression or they are pregnant with a condition which means they cannot be at work, that is it. You cannot question it anymore, and if you do, you will lose. There's no two ways about it. You're just going to lose, okay? And then you've got, with all of these things, these are all counted as protected characteristics, and there is a potential of a discrimination claim. Discrimination claims are uncapped. They are unlimited. So they can claim for any amount, not just a year's pay, which would be unfair dismissal, but any amount if you do things the wrong way, okay? The other side of the pregnancy is that because it's been 8 weeks now, there may be people who you furloughed who weren't pregnant or didn't know they were pregnant when you furloughed them. Okay, and now 8 weeks later, they've realized that they are pregnant. If you go back to somebody, I'm just being cynical business head on, okay, if you go back to an employee and say, right, I'd like you to come back, and they say, oh, I can't, I'm pregnant, you will need to get proof of that from them. They will need to provide you with the GP's note if they weren't pregnant or hadn't told you they were pregnant before they went off on furlough, okay? In the nicest possible way, we can't believe it unless we have confirmation, okay, on that one. If they don't have any of the other criteria and they say, actually, I'm pregnant and I've got a condition, then actually we need to know about that. We did have a client once who was about to fire an employee. She'd only been there 3 months, and she said, oh, I'm pregnant. And so he didn't fire her. He was well trained in that. But he also, this is before he became our client, he also then didn't ask for the MAT B1 form, which proves that you're pregnant. And the pregnancy went on and on and on. And a year later, still no baby, still no big stomach. They couldn't tell whether she was getting a little bit fat or not, and they didn't like to ask because they thought that'd be wrong. And the person advising them at the time was absolutely rubbish at their job. And a year later, they went, wait a minute, you aren't pregnant. And she's like, no, I'm not. So they fired her. She took them all the way to tribunal, all the way to court, and stood there. And her lawyers claimed that she was discriminated against because she wasn't pregnant. So she had been fired for not being pregnant, not for being pregnant, if you see what I mean, which is the normal way it goes. And the judge just laughed them out of court, thank goodness. But our client had to do all the preparation to go there, had to have a barrister. You can't turn up in court without a barrister. You will not be taken seriously. But luckily the judge went, no, you're just, no, get out, you're wasting my time. But I'm just saying it happens. So this is why we ask for proof in a nice, caring, understanding way, and then we know where we are, okay? But ideally, certainly pregnant with heart condition, pregnant with any condition that could be a problem, furlough or work from home, okay? And financially, that shouldn't be a problem until the end of July now, okay? If they're over 70, that comes into the categories, but the only over 70s we've had are the ones that want to come back so far, that they don't have any underlying health condition, although that's not important to the government criteria, but they are actually desperate to come back to work. So again, as long as you're following the risk assessments and the guidelines, you'll be fine. However, if they're saying they don't want to come back, it's then, well, it's not the NHS that you know they're over 70, but it's then really furlough again, or working from home. But you could say, depending on the situation, so usually in our golf clubs, it's a greenkeeper who gets to that age. It's not somebody in the clubhouse. They're going to be outside. It's fresh air. They can avoid people quite easily. They're not going to come within 10 meters of anybody else. Actually, we would like to have you back at work. But again, that's a bit more of a grey area. If they don't have any underlying health conditions, you might want to push a little bit back on that one if they say they don't want to come in. But again, furlough is still the end of July. You're not financially out of pocket. You don't have to top up. You just have to pay them the 80% up to the cap. So financially, it should be doable to keep them off so that avoids any claims against you. Julie, who's not working today, Julie is obviously extremely bored at the weekend sometimes, and she went on last weekend to some of these ambulance chaser websites, and you can tick a few boxes and it will give you a letter to send to your employer saying, you can't ask me to come back from furlough because A, B, C, D, I'm over 70 and therefore it's age discrimination, and therefore if you do make me come back, I'm going to sue you. So the ambulance chasers are already out there, already active, already, you know, helping people to start claims. So just be aware, if you get one of those letters, let us know, because, you know, we'd like to see one. Sorry, that's just, it's not going to be pleasant. The other thing, because there's still the discussion, for want of a better word, of when the schools are reopening, and what years are reopening. That currently, as far as I understand it, years 1 and 6 and reception, but then not all of the class are doing sort of half a class at a time. Now, in contrast to that, you have nurseries. Childcare nurseries are opening from the 1st of June. I know somebody who's high up in Busy Bees Nursery, Nationwide Nurseries. They are back full time, 5 days a week from the 1st of June. Absolutely no question of that. So if your staff have preschool children, there is a good chance that they will be able to get childcare. If your staff perversely have school-age children, there's almost no chance that they're going to have childcare. So you really need to be furloughing them or letting them work from home. Okay, you can't insist at this point that they come in. I appreciate, again, this might be a generational thing, it might be a gender thing, but saying that, well, the job's in here and we need them in here, okay, before coronavirus, that might have been okay as an attitude. It would have been an old-fashioned attitude, but it might have been okay. Now it's totally impractical. It's not that they don't want to come in. I'm sure some of them would be delighted to be in the office where it's nice and calm and they can drink their cup of coffee without being interrupted all the time. But they just can't leave the children at home. Okay, so you've got to be looking at when the schools are open on that. And if you do start doing disciplinary for people with childcare issues not coming in, or heaven forbid fire them, that is a discrimination claim. That's going to be indirect sex discrimination. Okay, because usually it's going to be the women that are fired, just saying, rather than the men, and women are the main carriers. So again, it's a blank check you're writing. So if there are childcare issues, and again, you're having that conversation with them. It's like, we're thinking of opening up. Would you be able to come back? No, I can't because I've got childcare. Oh, okay, tell me about that. So how old are your children? Remind me. And what about your partner? But the ones we've had with issues have been the ones where their partner is a key worker. So they are working all the time. It's not possible for them to come back in. So it is frustrating, I know, but until we've got better childcare, there's nothing we can do about that.
Can I also mention that there are some situations where actually the mum and the dad are both working from home, but they're both working from home, and therefore it needs both of them to watch the children, because in some cases you might think because dad is at home, mum can come to work, or the other way around. If they are both working full-time from home, it just might not be that easy to take care of a child and work all on your own at home.
Yeah, exactly. You need to play tag team to keep children engaged and not, oh, matches. I've never seen those before. What can I do with the matches? So I will go on to shielding in a second, but with all of this, actually, from talking about that, you need to remember that all of us on this call here have been dealing with the situation, the lockdown situation, the furlough situation for the past 8 weeks. We've been looking at it on a daily basis, most of us, if not an hourly basis. We've been looking at where the business is. We've been looking at what we need to do to open up again. When can we open up? What are the guidelines? We are up to date on that. When you're talking to your staff, they will not be at the same point as you. Okay, they just won't. If they've been furloughed, they may well have spent the last 8 weeks trying to ignore the situation outside. Okay, they will not have been doing Zoom calls about it like we have. They will not have been reading every single word on the government websites to find out stuff. Whether they should have or not, that's not the point. The point is they are in a different place. This is an exceptional situation. Nobody expected to go through this. My daughter has got now a totally unrealistic expectation that, once a year she gets put on furlough at 90% of her salary and can sit at home for 2 months and be quid in. I'm like, that's not real life. Normally you would be fired. You have to accept that people will not necessarily be as positive, as eager as you are to get back to work, or maybe we're not positive, but once we get back to work, there may be pushback from them because they are not at the same point on that sort of it's a change cycle to go, oh yes, I've kept up to date where I am, I know where I'm going, right, I'm happy to come back in next Monday. Just give them a little bit of slack. It doesn't make them a bad employee necessarily if they push back and they say, I'd rather not, or I don't want to, or I'm definitely not going to. Okay, give them a second or a third chance. We don't need to start firing people yet. Just give them a chance to warm up and get close to where you are on your understanding of the situation, because they will not be there. Even the ones who've been working from home will not be at the same place as you are when you start saying, right, next phase is da-da-da. And they're like, oh, is it? Okay. And you have to do a bit more explaining now. The media has been extremely effective, possibly incorrectly, but extremely effective at scaring everybody into staying at home, which is why the lockdown was so successful, much more successful than the government thought it would be. Now you've got to counteract that and say, okay, yes, it is dangerous, but not in these circumstances. You are competing with the media on their scare tactics, because that's what media are good at, scare tactics. So just be aware that it's not that they're being a difficult employee and they're for the chop the next time you see them in face-to-face. Just give them a bit more leeway because they are in a different place, okay, with all of this. I mean, I'm giving you the legal stuff, I'm giving you the cynical stuff, I'm trying to give you some of the human stuff as well. these are what we start with, and then we're going to have to tweak it to see what's best for each person, what for each business, to get you back to where you need to be successful. Okay. Right. So shielding. Right, so this is the one that is a little bit frustrating. So we've talked about this previously on the call, that if they're shielding, there is no right, and the guidance does not say that they should be put on furlough. Okay, now I think if they are shielding somebody who's got an NHS letter, that they should be allowed to go stay on furlough or to work from home. Okay, both of those are perfectly okay. However, that's going to depend on the situation that you're in and whether you need them back in again, okay? And you do need to make it on a business case, not a principal case. So the situation I had was with a golf club who didn't believe in furloughing somebody when there was work to do. It's like, okay, but the rest of the team are in, and if this person was sick, you would cope, wouldn't you? Yeah, we'd cope fine. So how is that different with furlough, where you have to pay him even less because the government's paying him? Why don't you just say, oh, well, no, I don't believe that he should. I think he should be in. Okay, that's your personal opinion. That is not a business decision. That's a personal opinion. So again, we've got to try and be a little step back a little bit. And if any of you do need help with that, because obviously we don't know any of your staff, we can go, okay, I'm listening to this now as a third party and going, okay, it sounds perfectly reasonable what they're asking. If they're shielding somebody who's had a kidney transplant, that sounds perfectly reasonable. If they're shielding somebody who they just don't want to get coronavirus, but that other person is not in any of the vulnerable groups, that's a whole different issue. Okay, so when they say, I don't want to come in because I'm shielding, you need to find out who they are shielding and the extent of that shielding that they need to be doing. So if they are one of these people who's got the 1.5 million NHS letters, we strongly recommend that you are furloughing them or letting them work from home. If they're not in any of the vulnerable categories, the other people, then you need to absolutely be doing strict adherence. I mean, and that is super strict. I mean, to the extent that they've almost got the whole office to themselves. So that, again, there's no personal injury claim and potentially a disability discrimination claim because you put them into a situation where they brought a disabled person into harm. Okay, again, we don't know how high the risk is. It might be, this may never happen, these cases, or there might be a whole, hundreds of thousands of them. We don't want you to be one of the test cases on this. So if you are going to insist on bringing somebody back who is genuinely shielding their household, you need to be above and beyond in your social distancing guidelines and your risk assessments. Okay, to the extent that you might want to be looking at one of the hazmat suits, I'm not trying to be silly here, but you might need to be looking at making them wear face coverings, okay, making sure they're wearing plastic gloves, disinfecting everything in the morning, in the afternoon. So there's absolutely no way that they can come back and say, I got it from being at work, okay? These are the useful links. I put the links in the chat. So I can't actually do that particularly well, but I was going to click on them. But what we'll do is I'll do the PowerPoint onto the website, so you'll have those anyway. But this is the top one that is the link about guidance on shielding and protecting. That is the one that's been updated. So that is the one you need to be looking at. There are several that talk about protecting extremely vulnerable people, government websites, just to keep us on our toes. But that's the one that they are referring to all the time in their briefings every day. Okay. So, okay, in the chat. So, Nadia, maybe if you could look at the Elizabeth chat, the questions in chat.
Yes, I have actually. Elizabeth's question's been in there a little while already. So, Elizabeth, this last section about shielding that Caroline addressed, does that answer your question, or do you still need some clarification? Elizabeth, are you with us?
Okay, so
in that case, I'll just answer the question. It's important that you make sure you understand what exactly the shielding is for. If it's a child, I'm sure it's really genuine. but still check, ask a few questions. And if you're comfortable that the shielding is genuine and that the child needs to be shielded, then I would strongly advise that you leave them on furlough. Or if you have to bring them in, like Caroline just said, just about short of a hazmat suit, I would advise.
Thank you. And what I also saw on Facebook yesterday, because they've obviously worked out on Facebook, they see me coming on Facebook. I get so many offers of things to buy. I need to stop clicking buy on Facebook. Oh, that's a really good idea. I love that video. So I stopped doing that, Caroline. But what they did have was, it looked like, you know, a beekeeper's hat, but it was clear plastic down the front, and you had space in there, and it rested on your shoulders. And to stop it fogging up, it was battery powered, so you'd recharge it every night. And it just looked so cool. I thought, oh, is that the way we're going to go? But something like that would be fine if they don't have to be on the phone, if they're just in computer work. If they wear one of those, there's no air going in and out, it's all being filtered. They'd be perfectly safe. So you just got to look at it and see how far you want to go to make sure that they are safe when they're back at work. And of course, every case is going to be different on that. Some places are going to be really easy to do, others aren't. So, okay. The other thing with the furlough and restructuring is we have been given more time to do restructuring if we want to. So we've got till the end of July to do this. You need, as we said before, 3 weeks consultation period, where you would pay them at the furlough rate of 80%, if that's what they're on now. And then you would be giving them notice, which would be paid at 100%, but you could claim back 80% from the government. And then you've got statutory redundancy pay, which you can't claim back in any way. But you need to be, if you are thinking about restructuring, you need to be working those figures out now, because we've been given that extra month, you may be able to make people redundant and get all or the strong majority of any notice period paid by the government. It will be the best value redundancy process you have ever had doing that, because really the biggest thing is going to be the redundancy pay at the end. But if you think that's a possibility, you need to be running those numbers now. You don't have to start right this moment, but you need to run those numbers now so you know where you are. You need to make sure you've got the money to pay those. That it is one of my worst situations when the employer comes to me and says, yeah, I don't have any money. I'm like, okay, well, you'll just have to give notice and, you know, make them redundant. We won't do the consultation period, but we'll just make them redundant. And they're like, well, I don't even have money for notice periods. I don't even have money. This was one of them. I don't even have money to pay them their salary this month because I've got no cash flow. And there's no excuse for any business owner to not know their numbers. If your accountant is not helping you, you need to be talking to Tori, because her team will absolutely make sure that you know what your figures are. You shouldn't be getting anywhere near to the stage where I have no money to pay salaries, all notice periods, or redundancy pay. That is not a situation you should ever be in. You should see that coming 6 months to a year beforehand. Okay, I appreciate coronavirus is different. I appreciate that is not something we could see coming, but there is no excuse for treating employees badly, which is what it is, because you didn't plan properly. Okay, sorry, that's one of my soapboxes there. Okay.
We have a question from Sonia Jenkins, which I can answer quickly. The question is, I don't know if you can all see it. Sonia has an employee who will be employed 2 years in August. And she's not sure that the business can sustain his role and salary in the future. She's asking, should she make him redundant now? And the short answer is yes. Get it done now. Get him to work his notice during furlough. Don't cut it too close. If I were you, I'd probably make his leaving date end of June rather than end of July, because that is cutting it too close. If you need any help with how to make him redundant today, give us a call.
The other thing about notice periods, because some of you will know about pile-on payment in lieu of notice. If you're doing a pile-on payment, you're not going to be able to claim that back from the government as furlough payment. So you would be putting them on gardening leave for their notice period, so you can claim back that 80%. If you do pile on and they're off the books immediately, that 100% of the notice period that you have to pay, you cannot claim back, okay, because they're not still working for you. So that's just to clarify that.
A line in your letter that can cover that is to say something along the lines of you are expected to work your notice, however, you will remain on furlough until X date. So basically you're saying you're working it, oh, and by the way, you're on furlough. So you're sort of layering it on top. That makes sense.
Okay, and the other thing when you're giving notice, well, generally now, is because furlough has been extended, you need to seriously be thinking about putting people on holiday in that time, because they won't have time. If it's till the end of July and you're leaving people on furlough till then, and then they come back, they're not going to have time. And they can carry over the next 2 leave years, but actually, while they're off, that would be quite a good time to do it. However, there is a caveat on that. The guidance from the government, they've changed their definition of holiday. Okay, the definition of holiday used to be that it's effectively paid time off. Okay, they didn't go into any touchy-feely definition of it. It's obviously a time for recuperation, but it was paid time off. That was the default thing. So they would definitely, that's why you couldn't pay people out. You actually had to make sure they weren't working. Now they've refined that, and there is guidance for holidays. I've updated our holiday fact sheet that is going to be on the website by lunchtime today, okay, which gives you the new link to the definitive government guidance until they change it again. They have been a lot more touchy-feely with their definition of holiday, and it's more about recuperating and to truly enjoy it. And it's like, wow, okay, we're getting quite touchy-feely here now. The point being, with that definition, is that if people are in the vulnerable categories and on furlough, they cannot enjoy their holiday fully. So our recommendation is, if you have people on furlough in any of the vulnerable categories, including pregnancy, heart condition, over 70s, any of those vulnerable categories, that you do not put them on holiday, okay? Because they have a potential claim under the working time regulations that it wasn't a holiday as defined by the government, and the government has now defined it, because they couldn't even really leave the house. The rest of us who are not in those categories can go out for unlimited exercise. You can drive anywhere in the country as long as you don't stay overnight there. You can go to your second home. As long as you don't stay overnight in your second home, you're absolutely fine to do that with the current guidelines. Vulnerable people are not supposed to be doing that, okay? So they can't enjoy it even as much as we can. Obviously, it's a laugh a second for the rest of us. So for vulnerable people, do not put them on holiday. For everybody else who's on furlough, if they don't fall in this category, you should be looking to use up the holiday they've accrued so far this year whilst they're on furlough, if you're not bringing them back, and you have to pay them at 100% of their daily rate for that holiday. Okay, and if you're terminating people, you can either get them to take their holiday during the notice period, that's absolutely fine, or you can pay it out. But they have a right to the holiday. I was talking to an intern yesterday, a paid intern, and her company are going, yeah, but you're on furlough, so we don't need to pay you any holiday. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Just because I'm on furlough, which is unusual, doesn't mean I don't have the holiday entitlement. So we're going to be writing a couple of letters to them to just clarify that if they don't do it, we're going to start an employment tribunal claim. So, because it's a black and white case. Have you paid her a holiday? No. Pay her holiday. I mean, they don't even need to do any more proof than that. So that's fine. Anything else? So we've done restructuring. Tori, is there anything we need to know about furlough at the moment?
No, I think you've covered everything that we're aware of, Caroline. I think the fundamental bit for us is this extension. So knowing that it's going to be continuing up until October, but also being aware that the calculations will not remain the same after July. So if you are doing your own furlough claims, be very careful that you're not just rolling out what you were doing at 80%, because it's not how it's going to look in August, September, October. And we just need to keep our ears to the ground as to what that's going to be, because we haven't got any guidance on what the figures are going to look like at that stage. And when you're writing your business plans to help you through this part, looking at your cash flow, for example, I'd be looking at sort of worst case scenarios. Maybe it's definitely going to be 50%. I would have thought that the employer is going to be expected to cover. So if you're in the hospitality, leisure, some of these areas where you may not be able to get back to work at all during the period where the furlough amount that you're going to get paid is going to come down, you need to be putting that into your cash flow plan. And business loans, bounce back loans, and those grants that you might have received already, they should be being tucked away to help you through that period, because it is going to cost you some money.
Okay, so any other questions at the moment? Is it all as clear as mud at the moment? Yeah, everybody's absolutely happy, and it's nice and sunny outside. It's getting a little bit warmer. I think they were saying, oh, it's going to be 18 degrees at the weekend, and that sounds so cold compared to what we've been having. So, you know, but it's probably normal May. That's fine. We're going to do this again next week. We won't be, there aren't any bank holidays on a Friday for, well, till Christmas now, I think. So I think we won't be, who knows if we'll be doing this by Christmas, who knows, but we will keep doing these weekly ones. Bring your questions, anything around furlough, around restructuring, about dealing with people who won't come back, any of those things, or anything else that you're having, any other problems you're having at work with staff, or even possibly accounting, although I don't know how many accounting questions we all want to listen to in the nicest possible way, just saying. But yeah, bring your questions, and then we'll solve them next week, and then any updates, as usual, we will go through them next week. Okay, there's just one more thing on the chat. Right, Oliver, for employees that have previously booked holiday but have now decided to cancel that holiday, can we insist on taking the holiday as originally booked? Nadia.
Hi, Oliver. Yes, you can ask them, or you can tell them that they still need, that you expect them to still take that holiday. However, please keep Caroline's previous advice in mind. If that is a person who has to stay at home because they're in the vulnerable categories, or they're shielding someone and a family member is in the vulnerable categories, please keep that in mind, because they won't be able to use their holiday now. So the same approach, really. If they are able to, you know, at least go out and about to a park or somewhere, then sure, tell them that you need them to still take it, or maybe meet them halfway. Let them take half of it and give half of it back, or something along those lines.
Okay. And then Sonia, can we decline holiday we'd previously approved? You can, but if you want to cancel their holiday, you have to give them twice as much notice as the length of holiday they've booked. So if they've booked a 2-week holiday and you don't want them to take it, you have to give them at least 4 weeks notice of that. So obviously, the more notice you can give, the fairer it is. And it does, you need to bear in mind at the moment that everything is in chaos around holidays. Is there a genuine business case to do that? Is there a way to do it? Because people have the right to holidays. So, and if they've booked something and it's going to go ahead, so maybe they booked something for July and it's not currently cancelled, they're probably looking forward to that. That's getting them through now. If you then turn around and say, actually, I don't want you to go at all, I'm just going to say you're going to get the prize of the worst employer of the year, really. That's going to be a big thing on your mantelpiece if you cancel it and their holiday was not cancelled. And
possibly a bill. Because if they have booked to go somewhere, and at the moment that's going ahead, flights, that kind of thing, and you cancel it when you've previously approved it, you will need to reimburse them for their loss.
Okay. Good. So hopefully we all get to sit out in the sun a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So Sonia, I think we've got some performance issues there. And threatened to leave if we didn't approve. Okay. That just sounds like a delightful person to work with.
That one sounds really fun. Give us a call about it.
Yes. Give us a call about that, Sonia, and let's have a talk through what your options are. Okay. Oh, yeah, no, sounds perfect. I think we need to be doing a redundancy to get rid of that person, to be honest, but okay. Give us a call and we'll sort out what we can do with that, Sonia, okay? Right. Okay, if there's no more questions, I think we should all go out into the sunshine and not start drinking too soon. Maybe G&T's before 12 o'clock. I don't think we need that quite today, maybe 12:15. And any questions, please send them to us if we can help you. Obviously, you're all on my campaign for, or most of your online campaign, we're offering a tribunal audit. If you are thinking of restructuring, or even if you're thinking actually now would be a good time to look at our contracts and handbooks, we're offering a free tribunal audit to everybody if you contact me before next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. So I'm sending out emails. If you would be interested in me reviewing your contracts and handbook, send it through and we'll set up a time to go through that on Zoom. Okay, no obligation, just a deal. Obviously, we're going to talk about working together, but that is the last 5 minutes. The rest of the time, we're going through your contract and handbook to show you how it's protecting the business, or alternatively, how it's absolutely not protecting the business. Okay, good. Everybody have a lovely weekend and see you next week. Thank you. Bye.